Statistics have it that 7.4% of children aged 3 to 17 years, that is approximately 4.5 million, have a diagnosed behavior problem. 7.1% of children aged 3 to 17, approximately 4.4 million, have diagnosed anxiety. 3.2% of same age brackets, approximately 1.9 million, have diagnosed depression. It is also on record that 20% of adolescents may experience a mental health problem in any given year. 50% of mental health problems are established by age 14 and 75% by age 24. Why is this problem very common? And what is the situation in Nigeria? And of course, the way forward. Dr. Labisi Iheyen, our consultant psychiatrist and former medical director, Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Oselu, Benin, is my guest on this week's package of Frontline. And I feel very honored having her esteemed presence. I am Ogochkuka Ona, and you're welcome. You're welcome to the program, Frontline.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. From the very beginning, so does mental health problems begin in infancy?
Yes, it does. Throughout the age spectrum of all human beings, each spectrum has its own pattern. The pattern of childhood mental disorders is a bit different from the pattern in adulthood. For babies, like if a baby does not cry at birth, that is a problem that can lead to severe mental illness as the child grows up. Or if the child fails to achieve the developmental milestones at the correct time, like we all know that babies are supposed to be able to sit around 5 months, 6 months, and be able to walk approximately by 1 to 1.5 years. If there are delays in these milestones, they are usually accompanied by some form of mental disorders. So that is an example for children. And as young adolescents, some who may be engaged in drug abuse are also expected to have some form of mental illnesses. And we are also talking of mental retardation among young people and young adults and adolescents. These are challenges, even though they may have physical or medical components, but they are also of behavioral problems. And as I say, it is in all the spectra. So if I start mentioning, I will also still talk about adults and old age people.
Okay, you said if a baby doesn't cry
at birth,
it can be linked.
Yes.
So does it mean somebody can be born like that?
Yes, when a baby is born, actually mental health problems usually start from pregnancy, but it's only when a baby is delivered that we start seeing the body, that is the baby.
It's hereditary.
Yeah, well, most medical illnesses, most behavioral problems have some degree of genetic background, some degree of genetic association with their parents or grandparents, and also the environmental or social factors also contribute or may precipitate the disorder. Like I talk about pregnancy. If a woman is pregnant, she's supposed to go to antenatal clinic where she'll be taught what to do and what not to do, what to eat and what drugs she can take and what she cannot take. Those messages or information are given to prevent some problems that may be associated with pregnancy and delivery. So I've mentioned about the child not being able to cry at birth. Babies are expected to cry when born, but some are delayed. Those children, they have a way of recording them in the hospital, timing the period the baby cries. So for babies that do not cry on time or at birth, they are usually accompanied by mental health problems as they grow old, as they grow up in life. So there are challenges, but as I said, there are genetic components, but there are also social or environmental factors that may now make it come out, that may now make it present for people to see, So it is common.
So if at the antenatal stage and a consultant or a doctor doesn't see that maybe a parent, the mother is going to have to transfer such behaviors to the child. How then can it be nipped before childbirth?
Okay. Like infections in mothers during pregnancy. If infections are not well treated, they can lead to challenges apart from challenges in the mother, it can also affect the unborn baby, like rubella or some viral diseases. And that is why mothers are also immunized, like they get tetanus toxoid while they are pregnant, just to be able to affect anything happening to the baby. And then there are some problems, some genetic problems that can be identified during pregnancy. Like there's a way they can detect if a child is going to be a sickle cell child while the mother is pregnant. So these are some things that can be prevented or can be well addressed before the baby is born. Or some babies that may be born with deformities, because it's known that women who abuse hard drugs, we are talking of Indian hemp, cocaine, heroin, and those kind of things, they usually have babies having some complication resulting from that. Like for example, women who abuse Indian hemp, usually their babies are born smaller than for age. They born small for age, and there may be associated deformities. We are talking of blindness in the baby or organ defects in the baby. And of course, invariably too, the child may have some mental health challenges. So there's a whole lot of problems, apart from medical, also psychological or mental, that can manifest, in pregnancy and as a result of pregnancy and child's labor and delivery. Or a baby that is born and there's an accident. Like if you may have seen some children with this kind of arm. Such result from problems associated with bringing out the baby, during birth. If a baby is too big for the size of the womb and the pelvis to come out, pulling out the baby can affect the nerves in the neck that supply the arm. And invariably, such a child, they call it Erb's paralysis. Such can be prevented, because if a woman is in labor, they test her, they assess the size of the baby, they can do operation to bring out the baby clean and fine. But if the baby is forced to come out, it may result in that kind of paralysis.
And that may even affect the child psychologically.
Of course, deformity, a kind of physical handicap will be a challenge to the baby.
Okay. So what's the prevalence rate in Nigeria?
Actually, mental illness, research work by the researchers in WHO have estimated that 1/4 of all inhabitants of the earth, I'm talking of 25% now, will have a mental illness at one time or the other in their lifetime. And the figure is approximately the same for all races. We are talking of Indians, Chinese, Europeans, Australians, and Africans. It is believed, and research work has confirmed it, that 1/4, 1 in every 4 persons working on earth will have a mental illness. And the commonest form of mental illness among human beings is depressive illness. Depression is quite common. It's depression that leads to suicide. Unfortunately, many people do not believe that suicide can be a complication of a medical problem, but it is, because Africans usually think of only the spiritual aspects of any matter. They believe somebody who commits suicide may have committed some crimes or some, yes, and it may be a punishment or a result of what they have done, whereas it's just a simple complication from depressive illness.
Okay, so talking about depression now, can children have depression?
Yes, even though it may not be as common as in adults. Like babies, I've seen a baby about 2 years old. The mother said if she carried the baby, when you carry a baby and you smile to a baby, the baby should smile back. But this baby will just look blank. So the mother was worried, and she brought the baby to the hospital. It was found that this child had chronic fever as a result of malaria, diarrhea and co, and was not properly managed. So this baby kept on having fever, it will remit, it will come back, it will go, it will come back, and invariably resulting in his mental handicap. The child will not smile, the child will not, he will cry, but he will not smile, he will not look happy. And the treatment was just to give antidepressants to the baby according to the dose of the age of the baby, and the baby improved.
Okay, so will that not affect him afterwards in life?
If the child is not lucky, he may continue to suffer from depression in his life. But if the child is lucky, depending on the degree of the severity of the illness of depression, it may be a real chronic problem for that child, but the child may be able to overcome it. And this comes to mind about the emotional support parents should need to give to children at home, because many children that invariably have mental disorders, if you look at their history, they are likely to come from homes where they do not have enough emotional support. I'm not talking of the financial support, say, okay, I pay school fees, I give money for food. No, the mother should have time to talk to the child, monitor the child's growth, monitor his friends, monitor everything that he or she does, encourage the child in areas that are good, and of course, discipline the child. So children that lack all those, invariably, by the time they get to adulthood, you see the signs. They are such that will join bad gangs, they are such that will be involved in armed robbery, cultism, gang raping, and all those social devices. There are those also that will have risky behaviors. When I'm talking of risky behaviors, I'm talking of prostitution, transferring HIV from one person to the other, and all those mess that one can experience in life. Because you see that parents who devote time to nurture their children, even though 1 out of 3 or 4 may go off the track, but majority will behave well and they will be responsible adults when they become big.
So what's the link between depression and mental health?
Depression is an example of mental illness. Okay, now let me talk about mental illness, because Africans believe people that have mental illness are only those people who pick rubbish on the streets. Mm-hmm. But it's not. Mental illness is a very big umbrella under which sleep disorder is. When you have sleep problem, persistent sleep problem for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you are not sleeping well, it's a sign of mental illness. Or somebody that keeps on thinking about, oh, this life is terrible, how am I going to survive, I'm not making it. It's always gloomy about life. It's always thinking of hopelessness. That is an example of depression, and it's a mental illness. Or somebody who becomes excited very easily, who comes everywhere and brings lies, cheering everybody up, interfering in other people's businesses, wearing very bright colored clothes, and does not seem to be unhappy at any time. That, if it is persistent and excessive, it is a mental illness. And of course, we are now talking of also people who speech does not make sense. They talk, but you can't make out what they are saying. And they seem to talk alone. They talk to themselves. That's an example of what we call schizophrenia. So you can see that schizophrenia, that is somebody talking nonsense, is a big difference from somebody who has depression. Somebody who has depression will look at life as being gloomy, hopeless, everything, dull, you will not be happy. Although nothing stops somebody who has depression from not having schizophrenia. It can combine in some people. But I'm only trying to clarify so that you can know the difference between somebody who is talking nonsense, who is hoarding rubbish, who is being naked on the streets, different from somebody who just has depressive illness, and also still different from somebody who is excited everywhere, is wobbling. So you can see there are so many shades of mental illnesses, even sexual disorders, inability to make love between husband and wife, or delayed gratification, or erectile impotence. These are all examples of mental illnesses.
It's so funny. There's this school of thought, Ma, that everybody has a little bit of mental illness in them. Is that correct?
You know, we human beings, we have our own different personalities. All of us, we have our own character that God has placed in all of us. But it is only when it becomes excessive that you say something is wrong. Like some people, they always get angry. That may be their personality. But it is now when it becomes excessive, they get angry with on little things, they become angry, they fight, they quarrel, then you say
unnecessarily,
easily and quickly, then it becomes a problem. But naturally, if you see something to make you angry, of course you'll be angry. Then you will find solution to it, and that's the end. But some people, no matter what you say, no matter what you do to pacify them, they continue to be angry. Then it becomes a problem.
Now what about laughing too much?
Yes. Somebody who is too jolly all the time, it's also a problem if it becomes excessive. Then let me also talk about dressing and appearance. In the past, like in the 50s and 60s and 70s, if a boy weaves his hair, you say this is you may say the person is mad, it's a problem. Or if a boy wears earrings. But now it's tolerable. You see boys weaving their hair, boys wearing earrings, and girls doing whatever. So it shows that it is when something becomes excessive that it becomes abnormal. So you may say, well, all of us have a degree of abnormality in us. Well, you may say it's correct, but at the same time, it is when it becomes excessive, when it disturbs the feeling of people around you, that you say it is abnormal.
All right, let's talk about suicide and depression.
Okay.
Is it every mentally ill or mentally tormented person that thinks about suicide? Or is it only those who are depressed?
Yes. Suicide is a complication of depression. When I say complication, let me give you an example. Like if you have malaria fever and the fever is not well treated, among the complications you expect from that malaria is what they call cerebral malaria. It will affect the brain, and the person will be talking nonsense. The body will be hot, and until a treatment is given.
That's what they call in the local parlance high fever.
Yes, that may be what they refer to as high fever. So suicide is a severity of depression. Depression, as I try to explain it, the person will be sad, he will be gloomy, the person will lose appetite, the person will not sleep well, the person may not be able to concentrate again. If the person is an executive in his office, maybe previously he can read 3-4 pages of newspaper at a time, but when depression comes, to even read a page will become a problem. If it's a trader, to count naira and kobo becomes a problem. If it's a student, to go for lectures, run to do assignments, to do many things becomes a problem. So they will not be able to concentrate properly. They won't be able to think right again. Everywhere will just be gloomy. It is at that stage, if it continues like that, and there's no treatment, the person may think it's better to die. That all this I'm experiencing, people seem not to understand what I'm going through, and there's no solution. So something will just come up to his mind. He'll say, let me just end it all.
So how do family members and friends
exactly how to recognize it? Very good question. Because majority of the people that we see with suicide or leave suicide notes, if you interview their family, most of the time they see the signs, but they do not think it is so bad. Like I will give an example of a young doctor in Britain. This lady she was a house officer. She was taking calls 3 times in a week. She would be in the hospital for 2-3 days. Then the mother, she went one day, she just drove her car, stopped at the bridge, and jumped into the water, and she died. So when the mother was interviewed, the mother said, well, her daughter was always complaining about the load of work in the hospital, but she never ever thought that this girl could take this kind of decision to just end it all. And suicide is very common among doctors, because people may think it's only people who are poor that kill themselves. It's not so. Majority of people who commit suicide are well-established people. A doctor too, he has built this hospital, he has equipped it. The week of opening, they opened the hospital, and then he just went into one of the rooms and tied himself up, and he died. Initially, the family reaction is that, oh, it's the wife. The wife must be responsible. She wanted to inherit the hospital. But when investigations were done, it was revealed that this man had been going for treatments for depressive illness. And as I said, suicide is a recognized complication of mental illness. And of course, all of us, we read in the newspapers from time to time stories of people who are frustrated in one way or the other. Like one man, they said the police seized his motorcycle. He felt this is the only means of livelihood for him, no other hope, no other thing, and he committed suicide. So it's very common. But the family had failed to recognize, or they may recognize, but they may just feel, pull yourself up. You don't be sad. Cheer up, cheer up. They will not know that depression is more of a medical illness. It's not just mere what you see.
Or linked to traditional...
Exactly. That maybe it's home trouble or spiritual. No. It is a recognized medical treatment, medical problem that can be treated.
All right. So if we can observe this in adolescents, what about children? How can we know that a child is depressed?
Yes. There are still signs, like what you have just said reminded me of a girl, SS2 girl, black. She had been complaining to the mother that among the siblings, she's the one that is ugly.
No, that's even an adolescent. What about in children who find it difficult to even express themselves?
Well, for those children who have not had sense of taking their lives, it may be difficult. They can't take their life because they don't know what to do. But they may be crying excessively. They may always be crying and crying. Maybe it's a child that the mother most of the time is not available, and the child has developed attachment to that mother. That child will be crying every day. And excessive crying is also a sign of depression. Because as I said, in adult, the adult will be very sad. The adult will cry and cry and cry many times. Or if the adult cannot cry, he or she may feel, oh, crying will have been better, but I can't cry.
So the person will feel withdrawn.
You feel withdrawn like from everybody.
Like the girl you are trying to tell us who feels she was ugly.
Exactly. So such a child, she was not eating anymore. Until suddenly, her mother saw that she was trying to slash her wrist in the kitchen. She went to take the knife, and I think it's just providence that made the mother, see her immediately. She attempted to take her life.
Stigmatization.
And then this issue of stigmatization too, because nobody, apart from the fact that you want to commit suicide or you are tempted committing suicide, you are stigmatized. For the mere fact that some people have mental illness, it's also, to them, it's a sort of stigma. But if people are educated, if people are enlightened, that mental illness is just like any other medical illness. It can affect anybody. And we see shades of people in the hospital, students, lawyers, doctors, politicians, who are on treatment. So there's nothing strange and bizarre that somebody has a mental illness. Once you see the psychiatrist, you'll be properly treated and you'll be fine. There are many celebrities that we know that have mental illnesses. So my mental illness was quite common. It's very, very common. Even in the biblical days, it was common.
Okay, so what's the way forward?
The way forward is for everybody to know what makes good mental health. Good mental health is not just the absence of diseases, but a stable relationship of your physical, your social, your emotional, and your financial status. If all work in harmony, then you are fine. But if you don't have money, you want to do things, you can't get them done. You want to achieve, you want to go to school, there's no fund. You want to make progress in your life, there's no money. That is definitely a source of depression. So it is when all these parameters are not good that any person will just be tipped off, will become mentally ill.
All right. Our medical facilities in the country, can we measure up to the number of cases we're having?
At all. In Africa, particularly in Africa, the number of mental cases are so overwhelming that the few doctors and nurses available in the country cannot meet up. But the medical people, somehow they are still trying in a way. Yes, because they give counseling, what we call psychotherapy. They talk to the patient, but there are challenges anyway with tradomedical people, because if somebody has a mental illness, is taken to a tradomedical person, such a person will be chained down, caned, beaten, he will catch infection in the place, and he may invariably die of infection. So the medical facilities we have in the country is certainly not adequate. But enlightenment like what we are doing now, when people listen to what we are saying, they'll be able to at least live a healthy life. Like adolescents that know that drug abuse is unhealthy, can lead to mental illness. If such a person avoids psychoactive hard drugs, you'll be okay. And then for the community, for the police, for the government, once they make sure that such drugs are not available in the community, then you have cleared your own path. Youths who want to be engaged in smoking, if they don't get them to buy, it will help to reduce the number of people who may have mental illness. And then mothers too, if they stay long enough with their children, supervise them, feed them, take care of them, make sure you provide what the children want. I'm not saying the children should be pampered, or messed up, but once you give out the adequate discipline and you look after your children, pay adequate time to supervise your children, you will see that many more people will enjoy positive mental health. And then government too, make the roads good for us, potable water, stable electricity. That will also reduce the stress that people go through early in the morning when they are about going to work. Because if such stresses are removed, then the person has a better frame of mind to do his or her work, and he will enjoy good mental health.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Labisi Heye, as consultant psychiatrist and former medical director, Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Benin. Thank you very much for the wonderful lecture. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, she has told us to take heed. All of us, we all have a role to play in our mental health. Governments, individuals, corporate organizations will have a role to play in this. All right. Thank you so much. I am Ogochukwu Karona. Bye for now.